CEO discovers a little girl sleeping on trash this Christmas Eve. What he found was incredible. Matt Reynolds sat in the back of his luxury car, the frigid New York City air seeping through the tinted windows. Outside, the streets were a tumultuous sea of holiday shoppers, honking horns, and festive lights. He felt the weight of another grueling day as the driver weaved through the traffic, inching forward. The chaos, a stark contrast to the polished boardrooms and curated meetings that filled his life, pressed upon him like an unending weight. Then, a flash of movement caught his eye. Behind a dilapidated convenience store, huddled against the cold, was a little girl, no more than 8 years old, her frail body draped in tattered layers that barely concealed her shivering form. A sudden pang hit Matt's chest, an ache he thought was long buried under a thick skin of ambition and success. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, wrestling with the sudden awareness that the luxurious life he occupied stood in stark contrast to this child's slumber on a pile of trash. "Stop the car," he commanded, his heart racing amidst a swirl of emotion. It wasn't just a feeling, but an urgent call to action that echoed in his mind. As he stepped out into the biting chill, a part of him recoiled at what he was about to confront. Approaching the girl, he learned her name was Lily. Her big, hopeful eyes told stories of resilience unbeknownst to his polished corporate world. "I paint," she whispered, revealing scraps of paper with vibrant landscapes rendered in crayons. As she spoke, Matt felt the walls he'd meticulously built around himself begin to tremble. This child, living amidst the shadows of a society that had forgotten her, held a light of raw talent. Yet, amidst this burgeoning connection, a storm brewed within him. A critical project awaited him, one that could secure the future of his company but also bore the weight of competitive sabotage. Could he really divert resources from his career-making move to help this child? His mind raced, torn between the urgency of his corporate responsibilities and the tug of compassion he felt for Lily. What kind of leader was he, if he could not extend a hand to those in desperate need? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. As pressure from his board mounted, Matt felt a tightening grip of desperation choking out rational thought. What did success mean if he left the voiceless behind? The magnitude of his corporate ambition felt increasingly hollow in the presence of Lily's innocent dreams and mere survival. But just as he began to pen down his intentions, a gallery showcase, a fund to raise awareness, word of his competitors sabotaging his project reached him. Betrayal hung in the air like a noose as he grasped the magnitude of the moment. In this crossroad, the lines between ambition and ethics blurred, a conflict that honed in on him like a relentless predator. With each tick of the clock, the stakes elevated. He envisioned the art unveiling, gaining traction, yet every moment of clarity drowned in a sea of doubt. Would he betray Lily's trust for the sake of financial gain? The anguish surging until it felt like a scream trapped in his chest. Was staying true to his values worth the cost of his career? The decision loomed larger as the betrayal burrowed deeper, tightening around his resolve. How could he choose between them, the child with hope in her hands and the empire built on the wreckage of others? Uncertainty loomed, and just as he formulated a plan, he stood on the precipice of sacrifice. Gripping his thoughts like a lifeline, ready to plunge into the unknown. The frigid wind sliced through the alley as Matt stood, heart pounding, grappling with an internal tempest. Each breath felt heavy with implication, a stark reminder that his decision would reverberate far beyond this moment. He looked at Lily, her fragile frame illuminated by the neon glow of nearby shops, joy and despair dancing in her hopeful eyes as she shared her dreams through her art. "Do you really think someone like me could have a gallery?" she asked, her voice trembling with a blend of innocence and yearning. At that moment, the universe shrank. It was just he and this unassuming child, each intertwined by an invisible thread of fate. But as he gazed at her, Unpolished and raw, he was reminded of the board meeting scheduled for the next day, a meeting that would decide the future of his company. Matt's phone buzzed in his pocket, a jarring reminder of the world he had almost forgotten. Shifting between his responsibilities as a CEO and the stirring within for this little girl felt unbearably dizzying. The pursuit of profits had long overshadowed his initial purpose in building a successful company. When did success begin to mean so much less than it once did? The bright lights of luxury cars and sidewalk cafes now felt like a facade, and he questioned whether he truly belonged to that world anymore. "Lily, how would you feel if I helped you showcase your art, to let others see your talent?" He finally asked, almost hesitantly, as the words unraveled from his contemplation. The idea took root in his mind like a wildflower breaking through concrete, vibrant and defiant. But doubt crept in almost immediately. He knew that backing what could be perceived as a charity project would send shockwaves through his business. Would his shareholders understand? "Really? You'd help me?" she gasped, lighting up in disbelief. In that moment, her expression pierced through his uncertainty, awakening a part of him he thought long dead: inspiration. Yet the looming question hung heavy: could his action here be seen as a distraction? Would a misstep, combined with the looming sabotage from competitors, tarnish his reputation and undermine his years of perseverance? As he stood on the threshold, Matt wrestled with his moral compass. What had once been clarity, the objective calculations of profit margins and shareholder satisfaction, began to waver, creating a tidal shift in his values. It dawned on him that the pursuit of authentic success was not confined to financial gain, it was infused with impact, with meaning. Gathering his resolve, Matt took Lily's small hands in his, feeling both the warmth of her presence and the unsettling weight of responsibility settle on him. "Let us do it together," he said, a newfound determination lacing his words. But as a flicker of hope ignited in them both, the ominous shadow of his board meeting loomed larger than before. Could he truly bring this vision to life in the corporate realm he inhabited? Back in his car, adrenaline coursed through him as he began to formulate a plan, one that would not only release the creative reins for Lily but also force the hand of a stagnating corporate structure dependent on traditional metrics of success. This approach might even lay the groundwork for a revolution in his company's culture. But the trepidation clung tightly to his spirit. He would need to confront the board directly, and soon. Would they embrace the shift he envisioned, or would they dismiss it? Standing before them, he could sense the potential confrontation, the days of polite business decorum now drenched in tangible tension. As the night deepened and frost tightened its grip around the city, he could feel the storm brewing, one that would push him to question everything he had built. Just as Matt's plan crystallized in his mind, a final thought broke through the fog: the time had come to face not just his board, but the conflict within himself. Would he buckle under pressure, or stand firm for something greater? With Lily's trust hanging in the balance, he resolved to make his move. And as dawn approached, the walls around his perception began to tremble, foreshadowing an inevitable clash that would shatter the silence of his carefully constructed world. The boardroom's polished surfaces glistened under fluorescent lights, stark and clinical. Matt stood at the head of the long table, his reflections about the future of his company mingling uneasily with the new sense of purpose that had threaded its way into his resolve. He spent a sleepless night drafting notes, rehearsing responses, but nothing could adequately prepare him for the tension rippling through the room. As the board members filed in, their expressions ranged from indifference to skepticism. Their very presence loomed like a breach of ice, an obstacle to the vibrant, transformative vision that rested on the tip of his tongue. Matt took a moment to breathe deeply, calling upon the inspiration he had felt in the alley with Lily. This wasn't simply a corporate presentation, it was more profound, an attempt at reclaiming the very essence of why he had started this journey in the first place. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady despite the impatience echoing in his chest. "I know we've largely focused on maximizing shareholder value, but today I want to discuss a shift in our narrative from profit at any cost to making a meaningful impact." As he spoke, he could see eyebrows furrowing. The CEO of Innovation Incorporated speaking about meaningful impact. There was a palpable ripple of disbelief. But he pushed forward, sharing Lily's story, her dreams, her artwork, and his plan to showcase her talent as a catalyst for cultural transformation. With each word, he felt a small degree of trepidation morph into passion, igniting the very purpose he'd long tucked away for the sake of bottom lines. Then came the pushback, as expected. "Are you suggesting we devote company funds to an artistic venture? Is that really where you want to steer this sinking ship?" asked Henry, a senior board member known for his sharp tongue and harsher opinions. Matt felt his heart latch onto the weight of resistance. This opposition was all too familiar, it had echoed in halls and meetings for years. "This project isn't just charity. It's an investment in our company's identity. It shows we truly care beyond profit margins. It could attract a new demographic, foster loyalty in a changing market." His voice rose, commanding attention more as it became charged with emotion. "But will it sell?" "That's what matters," retorted Marlene, another board member whose experience was wrapped tightly in statistics and trends. "Art shows don't generate revenue in quarters." In that moment, he realized what had been timidly buried for so long: innovation could mean embracing what was unconventional, a bold pivot away from pragmatism. In this age, consumers gravitate toward authenticity. They support brands that resonate with their values. We can elevate our brand, redefine success not just as profits but as societal contributions. We have to be the vanguard of change. Silence settled over the room as some members exchanged uncertain glances. He could sense the flicker of hesitation, a question lingering in the air: was there a shred of truth in his vision? "Matt," Henry's tone became less combative, almost curious. "What's your backup plan if this goes south? You catch all this flack and lose credibility as a company and individually?" His heart raced. This was where the conflict within himself pushed hardest against his resolve, where he weighed risk against intention. "If it fails, then I will take full responsibility. But if there's a chance it inspires even one person like Lily, to breathe creativity and hope into our world, isn't that worth something? Isn't that what legacy could mean?" The terms "fail" and "responsibility" hung between them, heavy, tangible. For the first time, Matt saw members actively grappling with the implications of his words, their skepticism cracking just enough to let in a glimmer of understanding. But just as quickly as that flicker sparked, uncertainty returned. "Legacy is built on numbers, Matt," Marlene finally replied, regaining composure. "We need to focus on results." The weight of her argument crashed like a sledgehammer, but a quiet determination solidified within him. Art had always been seen as secondary to commerce, yet here stood a path intertwining both, a potential future where business was not merely transactional but transformative. Suddenly, he felt the gravity of his conviction. He was ready to confront the worst outcome. But what he didn't foresee was the strength it would take to challenge his own long-held beliefs about success and worth. Just then, his phone vibrated in his pocket, jarring him back to the moment. It was a message from Lily, a simple photo of her latest painting, the colors vivid, and the joy radiating from her little face visible even through a screen. With a newfound fervor, he stood taller, preparing for the fateful next step. If he believed in this shift toward impact, he would have to fight for it, starting here, starting now, from those within his own camp. Could he convince them to redirect their vision towards something more meaningful? Or was he destined to watch his hopes crumble under the weight of tradition? As he looked at the board members with renewed resolve, he knew it was only the beginning of an arduous journey. The real question loomed larger now: would they embrace the unconventional path or cling to the safety of the status quo? The aftermath of the board meeting lingered like a thick haze. As Matt stepped out of the room, chatter and discontent faded into the background, replaced by the cadence of his racing thoughts. The steadfastness he'd exhibited during the meeting felt like a fragile construct in the face of doubt. He didn't typically voice such radical ideas, stepping outside the confines of financial certainty was foreign territory. Yet, as he found his way down the sleek corridors of the office, he felt the weight of his ambitions pressing heavily on his chest. Each step echoed his fear of failure. What if they didn't buy into his vision? What if the very people who had supported him through rising challenges turned their backs at the first sign of vulnerability? More crucially, what if he failed Lily? Dismissing her story as mere anecdote among numbers and spreadsheets felt like a betrayal. He had to find a way to bridge his ideals with their realities. In the following days, fear morphed into resolve. He withdrew into himself, dissecting the board's questions, concerns, and incredulity. Matt dug through market analysis reports, identifying opportunities twisted around cultural engagement and community impact. Discussions during board meetings tore at him, but gradually, he began to see a map emerging, a route that intertwined profitability with purpose. His strategies flourished amidst late-night brainstorming sessions. He seized the unique narrative that could transform skepticism into inspiration, a campaign that highlighted not just Lily's art but positioned the company as a platform for emerging artists. A series of pop-up events that embodied unity, creativity, and the guiding thread of personal stories. He envisioned collaboration built on emotional engagement rather than financial-driven motives. Each evening, he found himself returning to Lily. Her messages, with photos unveiling her latest creations, ignited flickers of enthusiasm within him that he hadn't felt in years. She became both muse and reminder, art as a vessel for change and connection. Without realizing it, Matt began incorporating her narrative into his pitch. It was more than a personal mission, it became a connective tissue for igniting passion among the board members. But with passion also came conflict. The data-driven executives weighed heavily on his mind, and during discussions with his advisors, their frustrated voices echoed like alarm bells. "You're risking a lot for something intangible. Art will not pay the bills," spoke Mark firmly, the financial strategist, who held numbers like a knight would draw his sword. Intangible? The mere mention of the word ignited a flicker of defiance. People are looking for substance in the brands they support. We can embody a commitment to culture and artistry that goes beyond quarterly returns. This is an opportunity to redefine worth. Matt was acutely aware of the rising stakes. Every time he voiced an unconventional thought, he felt the board inch closer to solidifying their traditional viewpoints. The foundation shook with every meeting where he sensed the leaders responding to his ideas with skepticism, convinced his dreams had no foothold in reality. He scheduled follow-up meetings to directly engage members, welcoming them to his vision rather than waiting for them to comprehend it through brochures and metrics. It was in these informal settings that tentative nods turned to laughter, where the initial trepidation softened, just enough to explore his radical ideas without the cold weight of the boardroom. As he expanded on the artistic narrative and its potential market benefits, the tide began to shift. Just when he felt the momentum gathering, a bitter dose of doubt crept in. Was this only wishful thinking? Just as decisiveness sparked, vulnerability plagued him. He needed validation, not just from the board or his peers, but personally. Could he be the captain of this ship steering through turbulent waters? After another long day of meetings, while working late, he sat in the dim glow of his office. His heart raced. As an email notification appeared, it was a response from Lily, a simple yet powerful question arriving with a photo of her newest piece, asking, "Will you show them the right way?" Matt's pulse quickened. Could he rise, not just for himself but for the opportunity to amplify voices like Lily's? The possibility rose within him, a tangible call to action, and the question crystallized, leaving him alone under the weight of mounting expectations. What was he willing to sacrifice to ensure his vision breathed life? The moment for decisive action loomed, but uncertainty still clawed at his gut. He found himself staring at the screen, fingers hovering over the keys. Choices awaited, courage or caution. Redemption or regret. With each question, he weighed not only the fate of the company but his own journey toward finding authentic value in a world filled with metrics. As the clock struck midnight, Matt knew the upcoming board meeting would be a culmination of more than just numbers or statistics. It would be a test of beliefs. Whatever happened next would forge a new identity or reinforce an old one. The time had come to face the ultimate conflict. What was he truly willing to offer for his ideals? The board meeting loomed just days away, a crucible that would determine not only the fate of Matt's proposal but also the definition of his professional identity. Candlelight flickered weakly in the corner of his office, a poor substitute for the fire raging within him. The stakes felt impossibly high, each moment spent in indecision gnawed at his resolve, transforming tentative passion into frenetic energy. He spent long hours meticulously crafting the presentation that would take center stage. His anxiety morphed into a compulsive drive to construct a narrative that melded both the heart of Lily's art and the potential profitability for the company. Every graph and statistic was painstakingly aligned with personal anecdotes and inspirational calls to action. Yet doubt crept back with each ruled-out concept or insufficient data. What if the presentation fell flat? What if the connection he so desperately sought to create remained intangible? His office became a sanctuary and a prison simultaneously. Isolation fed his determination, but it also fanned the flames of his insecurities. Between sips of cold coffee, he scrolled through Lily's artistic updates, each vibrant piece reminding him of his mission's weight. She needed him to give her art a voice in a world that often silenced such beauty under the weight of the bottom line. Then, a moment of clarity struck. The day before the meeting, an idea flashed in Matt's mind while he was reviewing the final draft. He needed to present the financial data, but not as isolated information. They needed to be woven into an emotional fabric, a tapestry showing how art could evoke a genuine customer response leading to increased sales. He envisioned a visual presentation that would mirror the vibrancy of Lily's pieces alongside hard metrics. It was an approach that demanded creativity as much as it did financial prudence. He spent the entire night revamping his slides, integrating vivid imagery of Lily's work as a storytelling device, juxtaposed against market potential projections. Each image of art danced harmoniously with charts depicting consumer engagement trends and loyalty metrics. By dawn, he felt a growing sense of pride. This was more than just a proposal, it was a representation of a shared dream, one that blended life with numbers, inspired by sweat and sacrifice, fueled by a belief that something greater could emerge from this partnership. But behind his excitement, uncertainty still gripped him. As he rehearsed in front of his reflection, internal voices of doubt mocked him. What if the board still dismissed his ideas? What if they saw the risks and chose security over innovation? At that moment, he recalled the email Lily had sent him, the photo of her piece captioned with "Will you show them the right way?" Right way. The words echoed in his mind, igniting a resolve that pulled him from doubt's depths. He wasn't merely advocating for an artist, he was advocating for authenticity, for the chance to redefine the corporate mission through creativity. It wasn't simply about selling, it was about establishing a dialogue with their consumers based on shared experiences and emotional truths. The day of the meeting arrived with a palpable buzz in the air. As Matt faced the gathering board members, he could feel the weight of their gazes, their expectations a tangible force pressing down on him. He took a deep breath, meeting their stares with a determination that cut through his residual fear. He was ready to challenge conventional wisdom, to show them the right way, the authentic way. The room quieted as he began, his voice steady. He led with the heart of the campaign, intertwining Lily's narrative as the essential thread binding everything together. Faces skeptically furrowed in response to his unconventional approach, but he pressed on, confident, poised, hopeful. But somewhere in the middle of his presentation, as he reached for a particularly critical point, a voice piped up from the back, a pointed question that threatened to unravel his carefully constructed vision. But can art really sell products? Isn't it just fluff? Sweat trickled down his back, and for a moment, all thoughts froze within him. A flash of anger bubbled within, he felt the urge to retaliate. But instead of responding defensively, he took a moment, channeling his initial instinct into a contemplative pause. Would he retreat into the familiar safety of profitability, or could he tackle this challenge head-on? The answer lingered in the air, and in that tense silence, Matt knew his next words could bring everything crashing down or lift them all into uncharted territory. The decision hung before him, a pivotal moment ready to redefine his path. Would he cling to expectation or venture into conviction? And with that question swirling in his mind, he took a breath and began to respond. Art isn't fluff, he began, voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. It's the very essence of human experience. It captures emotions that numbers alone cannot convey. Imagine a world where art connects us with consumers not as a sales tactic, but as a means to deepen relationships with the brand. What if every purchase made them feel something real? That is worth every dime. He looked around the room, gauging reactions. There was hesitation, skepticism, and even a spark of curiosity flickering among the board members. The path was treacherous, but this was a chance to turn doubt into discovery. Every heartbeat resonated in his chest, fueling his next words. Look at the demographics. Sales data shows that brands that have an emotional connection with their customers see exponential growth. Our consumers are asking for depth in their interactions, an experience beyond transaction, he pressed, channeling the conviction he had cultivated in his sleepless nights. That emotional connection is where our opportunity lies. The board members exchanged glances, their unspoken exchanges felt magnified in that moment. They had the power to dismiss or embrace this vision. A blend of anxiety and determination coursed through Matt, deepening his resolve. He was pushing boundaries, but he realized he was also challenging his own fears that each person in the room could, and might, choose to reject the radical idea he wove together. As the presentation continued, he felt a growing momentum. With each slide, he harnessed the philosophy behind Lily's art, sharing how her pieces imbued thoughts and feelings that linger long after a viewer had left. He illustrated the detailed consumer engagement studies showing how people connected with brands that respected and celebrated creativity. I'm not proposing we abandon our values of fiscal responsibility, he said. Instead, I want to demonstrate how this approach can fortify profitability by attracting a generation that craves authenticity. Let us lean into art as a catalyst for engagement, not merely decoration. Matt could sense the shift in atmosphere. The expressions around the room slowly changed, wariness morphing into interest. Perhaps, just perhaps, he could make them see what had constantly eluded him, that his fight wasn't about convincing others but about standing firm in his belief of what art could be, a vessel for sales and connection. But just as he began to visualize acceptance, a deeper layer of doubt rearose. Another board member leaned forward, eyebrows arched, cutting through the budding positivity. Are we betting our reputation on a whim? What if this doesn't translate to hard numbers? His heart raced again, but something in him clicked. This was a challenge, not an obstruction. I understand your concern, he replied, choosing each word with intention. But innovation often requires risk. Think about the most successful companies, they didn't grow by playing it safe. They ventured into the unknown. The silence that followed was deafening. Matt's pulse echoed in his ears as he faced the board, realizing that this conversation was not merely about the proposal, it was about asserting his own voice and redefining his place in this corporate landscape. Suddenly, a thought struck him, something he hadn't planned to say but felt instinctively necessary. If we are willing to explore this realm together, we will not just sell products, we will create a legacy. Imagine being remembered not just for the bottom line but for the change we inspired in people's lives. The response was immediate, the room electric with uncertain agreement and deliberative whispers. He sensed the tide shifting, could almost feel their walls beginning to crumble, and yet uncertainty clung to the air. With his heart pounding, he prepared to reinforce his argument with compelling facts about successful campaigns that had intertwined art and profitability, determined to step fully into this role he was carving for himself. But the voice of uncertainty still echoed. What if they chose to play it safe, far removed from the conviction he had just poured out? As he transitioned into his next point, the board members' eyes remained fixed on him, waiting for the breakthrough moment that could shatter his fears entirely, or seal his fate in mediocrity. If he fully embodied the gamble he took, everything could hinge on those final remarks. Could he truly bridge this gap, or had he just boldly walked into his own professional downfall? The answer loomed like a shadow behind his bold front, ready to either wrap him in triumph or engulf him in defeat. The room was thick with tension as Matt steeled himself for the final part of his presentation. He could feel his heart hammering, a primal reminder of the stakes at hand. This wasn't just about a campaign, it was a manifestation of who he was and what he stood for. He had taken a leap, and now, all he could do was hope they were willing to join him in the abyss. As he stood before the board, he recalled the countless nights spent researching, strategizing, dreaming of a world where brands could transcend commercialism through genuine expression. The weight of that dream knotted in his stomach. It was more than just professional ambition, it was about his identity. He was ready to swear fealty to this vision of an art-infused brand, but what if they recoiled? What if they chose to remain shackled to tradition? He glanced down at his notes, then back up at the board members. Their expressions ranged from wary skepticism to genuine concern, but Matt noticed a hint of intrigue in some eyes, a flicker of something that told him they were listening. "Let me tell you a story," he began, voice lowering to draw them in. "When I was younger, I discovered a local artist who painted murals on the community buildings. The moment I laid eyes on her work, it stirred something inside me. Those murals transformed dull, gray walls into vistas of hope and color. People gathered, talked, shared moments beneath them. Imagine channeling that magic into our brand." He watched as a few heads nodded, sensing a tentative connection forming. This was the yearning he had once felt, a flicker of belief igniting his purpose. It was real, tangible, and it transcended the corporate confines they inhabited. "Art can humanize us," he continued, passionate energy carrying the words. "If we embrace this approach, we won't merely engage customers, we will inspire them to share our vision, to feel empathy for our brand. We have an opportunity here." He paused, gauging the impact of his intensity. "An opportunity to redefine what our company stands for. Not just as a participant in a saturated market, but as a beacon for people seeking connection." As his vision flowed, Matt's nerves began to dissipate. He felt empowered, but also vulnerable. This was his heart on display, and with every moment he sensed the acceptance within the boardroom shifting. There was still that lurking tension, an undercurrent of fear at risking everything for the unknown. But wasn't his entire career about navigating the unknown? Every promotion, every decision had brought him to this point. The risk needed to transform into purposeful action. "Let us not wait for consumers to catch up to us," he insisted, raising his voice slightly. "Let us lead this movement. Let us be the brand that invests in healing, creativity, and genuine connectivity. If we can uplift our customers, we can build loyalty like never before." Then, a doubt crept in, whispering that perhaps he was further out on the limb than he intended. But what if art doesn't sell? That horrifying thought froze him momentarily, threatening to shatter his momentum. What if the gamble he was advocating for was not just a financial risk but also a personal one? "Art is about risk," he countered, unconsciously tightening his hands into fists at his sides. "We've been boxed into doing things a certain way, and the results show we're losing touch. Isn't it worth the leap to forge something that lasts, that resonates? We can either echo out in mediocrity or blast through the status quo. The choice is ours." A silence stretched, heavy with unspoken possibility, then a board member raised a finger. "What you're suggesting could dismantle our traditional viewpoints. We wouldn't just be changing our strategy, we'd be redefining our company's identity." His pulse quickened. There it was, the very essence of what he had hoped for. Exactly. We can build a new identity. Transformational, fearless, and one that champions creativity over conformity. The room remained quiet, and he sensed them processing this concept. As he opened himself to this new reality, the fear within him morphed into tenacity. This could be the moment that redefined his career, the very proposal that reshaped how they viewed art and commerce. But doubt still nipped at the edges of excitement. What if this was all for naught? The very notion anchored him, and with it came an incisive realization: he had to prepare for pushback, for real confrontation. "Matt," one board member finally spoke, a mix of curiosity and caution in her tone. "What is our plan if we implement this and it fails?" The challenge ahead was crystal clear now. It was time to brace himself for the confrontation that would shape his journey and the road to this radical new vision. What if failure was part of the journey he had to embrace fully? The moment had arrived to not just advocate but to stand firm, ready to face the realities this bold pivot would invite. Would he seize the moment, or would he retreat? The next step was fraught with tension, beckoning for resolution. The air in the boardroom shifted palpably as Matt read the expression on the board member's face. It wasn't mere skepticism, it was an invitation to delve deeper into his vision. The question of failure echoed around him not as a thunderous threat, but as a quiet whisper, an uncharted territory beckoning him to explore. He realized he needed a strategy, a pathway that could potentially navigate through the storm of pushback he sensed coming. First, he began, slowing down, carefully crafting his response. We'll engage our customers through immersive experiences. We'll host pop-up installations showcasing artists, hosting interactive events that blur the lines between consumer and creator. This isn't just a marketing strategy, it's about creating a movement. He stepped closer, heart racing with purpose. We can measure engagement not just through sales but through sentiment analysis, how people feel about our brand. We'll collect feedback and adapt. If art enhances our connection to the community, then it's a risk worth taking. Yes, there is potential for failure, but we'll pivot quickly based on real data and responses. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his colleagues with a blend of hope and unwavering determination. This is a chance to spearhead a new narrative. Every misstep will not equate to failure but will be a lesson to refine our approach. And if we fail, we'll publicly learn and iterate. Transparency can build trust. Matt couldn't ignore the subtle tremble in his voice. Was he convincing them, or was he trying to convince himself? The inner conflict simmered, gnawing at his confidence. What if this radical shift dismantled more than just old viewpoints? What if it dismantled his career? But then came the realization that every career breakthrough he had experienced often started with a leap into uncertainty. Perhaps the uproar of doubt was just the prerequisite cacophony before triumph. Change is unsettling, we all know this, he continued, a blend of gravitas and assertiveness enhancing his delivery. But isn't it exhilarating too? Imagine our brand becoming synonymous with art and human connection. People want to feel, they want to belong, let us give them that space. Why not be the catalyst for something revolutionary? He could see a few more nods, their expressions softening, but that glimmer of assurance didn't erase the nagging doubt buried deep within. The board remained largely silent, and the unknowing created a thick tension, all threads of hope woven tightly into a fabric of uncertainty. Then came another voice, this one rich with authority but tempered by a hint of warmth. Matt, we've seen brands that take risks like this thrive, as well as those that falter dramatically. How do you plan to facilitate the integration of our current business model with this new vision? We might be jeopardizing years of success. A challenge rooted in their legacy. This was what Matt had anticipated. But instead of feeling defensive, he welcomed the confrontation. We can conduct a phased rollout, he suggested. Pilot projects intertwined with our existing model. This would allow us to test, refine, and measure impact without abandoning all that we've built. As he spoke, he sensed the visceral energy of the room shifting. The enormity of their heritage now felt like a foundation, not a weight. He realized that his challenge wasn't merely to sell them on a dream but to construct a blueprint interlaced with their history while facilitating transformation. Something within Matt began to crystallize. This moment wasn't just a test of his professional skills, it was redefining his very essence. In the silence that followed, he felt exposed yet invigorated. The contradiction of fear and eagerness melded into a sharp clarity. He might not have all the answers now, but he had questions burning with intensity, and that was the key to continuing the dialogue. What he didn't know yet was how deeply these discussions would carve his identity as both a leader and an artist within the corporate world. Now, he concluded, eyes darting back to the board, let's have an open forum on potential ideas. If we're going to confront the unknown together, let us map out each other's concerns and solutions. As he stood, ready to embrace the forthcoming discussions, he felt the stirrings of confidence branching inside him. This was more than a pivotal moment for the company, it was a transition for him, a crossing into a world where vulnerability and tenacity would coalesce. But as the dynamic shifted, a sudden thought pierced his mind, unsettling yet exhilarating. How much change was he truly ready to handle, and at what cost? The echo of doubt still lingered, a promise of tension unresolved, hinting at the impending challenges that lay ahead. The momentum had shifted, but the real question awaited him, a probing consideration he hadn't yet unearthed. Was he prepared to lose everything he had built for a vision that might either soar or crash spectacularly? Matt's heart raced as the discussion unfolded around him, every voice a fragment of a puzzle he was desperate to solve. Each person's concerns became threads in the tapestry he sought to weave. The boardroom transformed from a battleground to a collaborative space, charged with energy that sent new ideas bursting forth, intermingling with apprehensions and hope. Pilot projects sound promising, someone remarked, but what about our investors? We might lose their trust if we can't show immediate results. Can we risk that? The question loomed large, intertwining with his insecurities. His thoughts spiraled into self-doubt. What if heated voices echoed through the heavens of his career, a career he had built meticulously, piece by piece? Yet, he felt a spark igniting within him. This was the moment to confront not only the board but himself. Perhaps, he began cautiously, we could segment our investments. We can reassure them with steady returns from existing operations while allocating a smaller percentage to these experimental initiatives. Every venture worth pursuing needs breathing room to flourish. And we need to communicate our long-term vision clearly so our investors can see the bigger picture. As he spoke, he felt an unexpected surge of resolve. This was no longer only about art or community engagement, it was about redefining success itself. How could he articulate failure as merely a mile marker on the journey to growth? There was depth in the argument he presented, something far deeper than he recognized at first. He could sense a gradual shift in the room, the nods morphed from tentative gestures into affirmations of solidarity and engagement. A flicker of curiosity sparked within him. What else could he uncover about himself through this dialogue? Could he push past the constraints he once accepted without question? The board continued to discuss practicalities, metrics for gauging success, timelines for pilot projects, potential artists to collaborate with, but through each exchange, Matt was discovering a newfound aptitude for leadership. He was not just the messenger of radical ideas anymore, he was the architect of a movement, a visionary crafting a collective path forward. Transparency breeds trust both internally and externally, he interjected again, the words flowing more freely now. If we can make our efforts visible, both to the public and our investors, we'll ensure that even if we stumble, we own it. Each step taken is a step towards refinement, not retreat. We're not just working toward revenue, we are cultivating relationships and feelings. The intensity of his voice was punctuated by a stark realization. He had been so consumed with protecting his career that he had overlooked its potential to evolve. His narrative stone had not only to withstand the flood of criticism. It needed to adapt to capture dreams and transform challenges into opportunities. Once dormant, his fervor now pulsed through his veins, igniting a beacon of creativity and strategy. The momentum swelled, conversations branching effortlessly, ideas bouncing like fireflies on a summer night. Each member of the board shared insights and concerns, but the amalgam of dialogue felt both exciting and exhausting. Finally, one quiet yet determined voice broke through, and what if we're met with resistance from our current customer base? Not everyone would welcome this shift. How do we deal with that? A subtle hint of fear stirred within him. Would the very audience he aimed to connect with choose to ostracize the brand instead? Would they alienate the core he desperately sought to expand? This was the fracture line in his vision, the crack threatening to swallow his idealism whole. But truth be told, what he didn't know was just how transformative this exchange was becoming. It forced him to confront not just the fear of external rejection but the internal vulnerabilities that had shaped his leadership style. He was learning to navigate chaos, to glean wisdom from dissent. Listen, he urged, drawing in a breath, it's essential that we don't dismiss our current customers. Their concerns matter. We can hold focus groups to understand their perceptions and involve them in the transition process. By listening, we can educate them about our new vision, and together we can build a narrative that resonates. A flurry of murmurs swept through the room, synthesizing engagement into a higher level of discourse. Yet, even amid the camaraderie, an icy prick of anxiety lingered behind his ribs. Was he truly ready for the weight of that responsibility? As Matt cast his gaze across the boardroom, he realized he was standing at a crossroads he never anticipated. Transformation, both professional and personal, awaited him, yet ensured by emerging questions he had to confront. But one lingering thought gnawed at his essence: would he emerge from this pressure cocoon as a leader defined by his ideals, or one weighed down by his fears? The real challenge loomed ahead, surging toward him in waves of uncertainty, promising a confrontation that would test everything he had begun to rebuild. Would this path bring him pride or regret? The answer hung tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly out of reach. Matt stood at the center of the boardroom, surrounded by shift after shift in the conversation. Each voice contributed to the growing momentum, offering hesitations and suggestions that rippled through the team's collective determination. Weeks ago, he would have never envisioned himself fighting for the voice of an artist like Lily within the heart of a corporate boardroom. Yet here he was, fully engaged, not merely defending his project but inviting an evolution that required courage, introspection, and resolution. The notion of failure now stirred within him, not as a threat but as a potential pathway to growth. He felt a palpable swell of confidence rise as he articulated the next steps: a series of engagements that would not just include his current consumer base but would draw them into the unfolding narrative of creativity and connection. We can launch a campaign that embodies collaboration, he proclaimed, an art showcase where our loyal customers are encouraged to submit their own interpretations of their experiences with our brand. This gives them a stake, a chance to express themselves. This won't be just about us. It will be about all of us. Skepticism shifted as ideas evolved, each member visibly wrestling with the transformative potential of creativity intertwined with commerce. He witnessed the board leaning in, not just listen to him argue but beginning to envision a future where innovation wasn't an isolated endeavor but instead a shared quest. Matt felt a spark of recognition that he had evolved from the confines of merely defending his ideas to illuminating a way forward together. Let us galvanize our narrative around human experience, he continued, passion fueling his delivery. Art reflects life and encourages dialogue. It is time we embrace that, not just in promotional terms but as our corporate DNA. He was gaining traction, yet the wheels of doubt turned incessantly. What if they selected criticism over vision and cast aside his idea in favor of maintaining status quo? But pushing through that uncertainty only fortified his resolve. He had tasted the thrill of purpose. This moment demanded clarity and conviction. One board member gingerly raised their hand, a testament to the shifting atmosphere. We need to evaluate how we can scale this outreach without compromising our operational integrity. What safeguards will we enforce to ensure this doesn't backfire? Matt welcomed the question, recognizing it as an opportunity rather than a roadblock. Every project presents risk, he replied, grounding his responses in a blend of pragmatism and vision. We will set measurable goals for engagement, define benchmarks for participation, and seek real-time feedback. If it falters, we'll adapt. Transparency will be our hallmark. With each response, he unearthed layers of his personal growth. His evolution was reflected in the very fabric of their discussions. He had transitioned from ambition-oriented leadership practices to a more enlightened understanding of value, identifying that success was hinged not solely on profit but on connection to both the community and their shared narrative. As tension melted into collaborative energy, he realized it was not just the team that was transforming. He too was emerging as a leader, confident in vulnerability, courageous in his willingness to redefine success through renewed values. The meeting reached its climax with another voice, one of skepticism still wrapped in tradition yet echoing a sentiment of reluctant acceptance. All right, Matt. Let us see it through. We'll dedicate resources to this pilot project, but you better believe we'll evaluate not just the financial returns but the socio-emotional impact on our audience. Relief washed over him. This was more than just a concession. It was an acknowledgement of the power of art, the validity of connection, and the cognizance of a company eager to navigate into the unknown. Victory was nuanced and uneven, yet Matt's heart swelled with profound satisfaction. He felt the ground solidifying beneath him as he grasped the reality of what they had collectively chosen to embark upon, a journey that intertwined their commercial journey with authenticity, allowing the narrative of art to breathe life into their brand essence. Stepping into the office the next day was different. New energy permeated the environment. There was excitement, curiosity threaded with purpose. Employees were buzzing about the possibilities, their eyes shining with hope that their company could finally emerge as a leader, paving the way for an authentic approach in corporate culture. With transparency anchored in their mission, Matt was poised to undertake the next significant step. He would connect with Lily more meaningfully, bringing her vibrant passion and artistry into the corporate spotlight. They would unveil the campaign together, inviting the world to not just witness but participate. Matt had redeemed parts of his identity he thought long lost. He had proven to himself that true leadership embraced complexity and vulnerability. And now, as he held a sketch from Lily, infused with color and hope, he felt anchored, the very representation of what they were championing. A closing thought solidified in his mind, echoing louder than any previous setback. He had not just salvaged a project, he emerged as a transformative leader within his own narrative. This was the moment, this was what success truly entailed. With a sense of purpose, he reached for an email draft to Lily, summoning the words that would showcase the faith he now possessed in both her talent and their shared vision. It was time for both of them to shine. Now is your time. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.